Good Friday evening, everybody. Rob O'Connor here from RobVenoSports.com with a look at the Final Four. We started with 68, and we're down to 4. Only 3 games left, and we'll know who the national champion is for the 2017-2018 college basketball season. To break down those Saturday games, I bring in the founder of RobVenoSports.com, none other than Rob himself. Rob, how are you this evening?
Hey, I'm doing great tonight, Rob. How are you, buddy?
Doing well. We've seen it all this tournament, I think, from some crazy upsets and very questionable coaching decisions to some blue bloods battling it out on Sunday night to get the final team into the Final Four, and got a little bit of everything. We got a big matchup between Nova and Kansas, and we got Big Ten powerhouse Michigan going up against Loyola out of the Missouri Valley Conference, and should see some good basketball tomorrow night. The lines are very similar for both games in terms of the point spread, and they've been kind of hovering within a point all week of each other since the lines came out. Let's start with the Loyola-Michigan game, the early game on Saturday night. Rob, what do you see in this matchup between a Michigan team that has really had their share of luck to get to this point? They had a very impressive buzzer beater against Houston. They had some questionable coaching from Florida State that helped them pull that game out at the end. And then there's a Loyola team that's also had their share of luck, a buzzer beater against Miami. They could have been out on the first day. And here both these teams are on the last Saturday of the college basketball season.
Yeah, it's interesting the paths that they have both taken to get to where they are, Rob. Obviously, for the Michigan Wolverines, let's start there. That team in particular had, their season come within, I don't know, you could describe it a lot of ways, but in the end it came within, a couple tenths of a second of being over if Devontae Davis of Houston makes another free throw in that contest, right? I think he missed 3 out of 4 in the last 25 seconds after going 8 for 8 to start the game. So those 3 for 4 that he blew in the last 25 seconds really cost Houston. It looked like Houston had been on their way. But Michigan, once they survived that, came up big against Texas A&M, beat Florida State, and, of course, Loyola. Loyola, to me, Rob, has somewhat been a beneficiary of the matchups. A Miami team that was not at full strength in their first game, which they won by 2. A Nevada team missing their point guard, Lindsey Drew, and they win by 1 point in round 3. They did take out Tennessee, but again, that too was on a late heroic shot to win by 1. And then the last game was probably the most impressive, but again, a game in which K-State was without their top player, Dean Wade. So, it's been somewhat of a fortunate run as far as matchups are concerned for Loyola. The bracket had to get busted up in order for them to get this far, right? So I think that what we're going to see here on Saturday is a real true test for Loyola against an opponent that comes in as hot as anybody. And Michigan wasn't just hot during the tournament. They were hot from the second half of the Big Ten season on. So 2 teams coming in probably playing their best ball of the season. Kind of mirror images, right? I think you would describe both of these teams the same way, fairly methodical, based on defense, get good shots. The one thing I'll say about Michigan, Rob, is that they're a 3-point shooting team where offense is concerned, and they haven't shot the 3 whatsoever in this particular tournament. If you just minus out the Texas A&M game in which they went 14 of 24, 58% from the floor, 42 points scored in that game on threes, you take that out, and for this tournament, Michigan's shooting 25% from three-point range, 17 of 68. They've had 3 games where they didn't shoot it at all, and still came out on top. It'll be interesting to see because, remember, we're dealing with another change of venue here, and for the first time, unlike the basketball venues that have been hosting the rounds up until now, you're talking about playing in a football stadium at this point. Backgrounds are a little bit different. We'll see how these teams react first time out. I know they've had practice sessions in the Alamo Dome, but it's always interesting to see how teams shoot their first game into the Final Four.
And, I mean, you bring up a point of Michigan not hitting their three. I mean, I think Wagner was 0-7 against Florida State. I mean, he couldn't buy a bucket, and he's normally a reliable shot from the outside.
Yeah, there's no doubt. And they've got a few of them that can really knock it down from three, and it just hasn't fallen. But John Beilein has relied on the defense. They've relied on enough offense, and pretty good advantage at the free throw line where they've shot 11 more free throws through this tournament than their opponents have, and that's resulted in a +4 on the scoreboard for Michigan. But again, you just expect Michigan to shoot a little bit better. Their overall shooting percentages, Rob, in 3 of their wins against Montana, they shoot 44.7. Against Houston, they shoot 35.6. Against Florida State, they shoot 38.8. They've gotten here on defense. They've gotten here on, a buzzer beater from, let's say, 35 feet out, where Loyola has won 3 close games as well by 2 points or less 3 times, then blow out K-State. But they have shot the ball considerably well from three-point range. They're 42% for this tourney. They're 52.5% from the floor overall. There's a big difference in how these teams have shot the basketball. I'd venture to say that for Loyola, this will be the best defensive team that they've faced so far. And Tennessee rates as a good defensive team. So does K-State. K-State was shorthanded. I'd say Tennessee is the best defensive team they've faced so far. Michigan's better than Tennessee on that defensive end. They both have a week to prepare. Both coaches are very, very astute, so you'd expect good game plans. I think it's going to be a great game. I think the point spread falls right in line. We didn't mention that Michigan opened at 6, 129.5 the total. Game has fallen to 5.5 in most places. You can see some 5s out there. There's been Loyola action throughout the week, but a lot of money is going to come tomorrow, Rob. We'll see where this number gets pushed to, but I think that most of the money that's going to be bet on this game will be bet tomorrow rather than in the 5 days or the 6 days that have led up till tomorrow.
I look at it, and I mean, I think the spread, I think it's a very fair number. I think any time you look at the number 5, and especially in football because it's a dead number, in basketball there really is no number that's quote-unquote dead, but I look at the number 5, and I just say, the underdog is lively. They have a chance to win. It's not going to be a blowout. And I look at this game, and I think both of these teams are going to value their possessions. They're going to play tenacious defense. I tend to skew towards the under in this situation. The one thing that absolutely scares me about a total 130, 129.5, and going under that is the teams are pretty evenly matched. You look at the spread of 5, and if it's anywhere from, let's say, a 3 to 8 point game late, there's going to be fouls, and there's going to be a chance to put up points in the final minute to 90 seconds of this game where you could be on a pace of 120, and next thing you know, you end up with 135. You get 12 or 15 points in the final 90 seconds of a game because who's going to give up and lay down with a chance to go to the national championship game on the line?
There's no doubt. And we even saw that this evening in CBI and CIT play for championships where lots of points were scored late. The North Texas game at last check had surpassed the 140 total by 20. I think they were at 160 with a few seconds left. And, for the majority of that game, Rob, that was looking like it was going to be an under. But because, like you say, the score margin was close enough to where you could foul, score, you get a bunch of points that way. always something to concern yourself with. I think the other concern obviously would be if Michigan does shoot the ball well tomorrow, then you could be looking at an over. There's so many variables when it comes to that type of thing. But I know both teams will be ready. Both teams are predicated on defense. We'll see which one can outdo the other. I think both coaches are known for mixing defenses. John Beilein likes to go to that 1-3-1 zone a little bit, and then to man. He'll throw something different at you throughout the game, as will Porter Moser. So interesting contest. Hopefully for Loyola fans, the moment doesn't seize them. They seem to be pretty loose so far, Rob, but as the notoriety has followed them throughout the first 4 rounds of this tourney, you just wonder at this point with the really bright lights if they falter somewhat or succumb to that a little bit. I don't think Michigan will. I'm not saying that either will, but if one team is going to falter, I would say it would be Loyola. I don't think Michigan will. That's a group that had a pretty good run last year with a lot of these same players. So we'll see how it goes. It'll be interesting to see where this line moves, that's for sure. I would be in favor right now. I haven't played the game yet. I would be in slight favor of playing Michigan in this spot. But again, we'll see where the number moves tomorrow morning.
Well, I mean, I can tell you we'll go to the second game. I'm almost looking at from a personal perspective. It's not something I do overly frequently. I'm not a huge money line parlay guy. I'd almost be looking at a Michigan-Villanova money line parlay. We'll jump into this Kansas-Villanova game, and I mean, Villanova has proven, and it's something I said to you on one of our podcasts, right, I think when the tournament started, it might have been Selection Sunday night. Villanova, as far as I'm concerned, is the only team in the country that can win a basketball game 65-60 or 94-91 and look good doing it either way. They can play slow down. They can play fast. They can hit the 3 when they need it. They can go down low and post up with Brunson and get a bucket when they need it. Villanova just finds a way to win and to score buckets when they need it, get defensive stops when they need them. Kansas is a great basketball team. I don't think they have enough to beat Villanova.
Yes, certainly on the Kansas side, Rob, to play a couple of rounds throughout that Big 12 tournament, and then I think the first round of the NCAA tournament without their starting center. They've since gotten him back. And in the process, Sousa, the kid who stepped in to play center, has become a threat. But it's really about the guards with this team. Let's face it. The guards on Kansas have been tremendous. They'll try and stretch Villanova. But, you know, in Villanova, I think it was against West Virginia where in our preview, I get a lot of stuff mixed up where certain things were discussed, but I believe in our preview it may have been on a Sports Memo podcast. But, you know, where West Virginia was concerned, you just felt like Villanova was the one team that could handle press Virginia, the style in which they come at you, which is not just 94 feet of pressure constant, but it's the physicality that they play with to add on to that. Villanova has such depth where ball handling is concerned, where guard play is concerned, that I don't know where Kansas holds an advantage. To me, what KU does best, Villanova does a shade better. Probably why they're favored in the price range that they are, 5 points. Again, you talked about the other price tag looking fair to you. This one is in pretty good territory, too. My power ratings had made the opening game Michigan -6, which is a half point higher than where it sits right now, but it is right where the opener was placed. Power ratings for this game made Villanova 4 on the neutral floor. They came out 5. I think the odds maker probably padded that a shade, knowing that Villanova has become the favorite to win this tournament. But from a fundamental perspective, the guys on the floor, I think I can make it as simple as what I just said earlier. What KU does best, Villanova does just a bit better. And if Duke couldn't beat Kansas, with the inside play that they have, Marvin Bagley III and company, and if Duke couldn't beat Kansas with the zone that they employ, Kansas shot over top of the zone, then I don't know that KU is going to beat Villanova here. I just think Villanova too good on all fronts, just like you said, and we'll see how this one goes. I'm not sure that I could lay the 5, but I will say this. If you lay 5 with Villanova, and in the end you get the free throw game, you get Villanova with a lead and on the free throw line, you're probably going to cover. That happened in the last game Villanova played against Texas Tech. Tech kept getting close, within 6, within 8, because they were scoring and fouling, and eventually Tech missed a couple of shots in the final 30 seconds, sent Villanova to the line, and I think they made, just off the top of my head, I believe it was like 6 or 8 in a row from the free throw line.
I think they missed 2 foul shots maybe the entire second half. It was quite an impressive performance. And you look at Villanova we'll go against West Virginia first, and then we'll go against Texas Tech. We look at them against West Virginia, and it was a game where they were down 5-6 points with 12 minutes to go. They just turned around and said, all right, let's go win this game, and they went on a big run, and before you knew it, West Virginia had no chance to come back in that game. Then you look at the Texas Tech game, and they were up comfortably the whole game. I mean, Tech got within, I think the closest they got was within 5, maybe 4, and Villanova played up, just to put it bluntly, like crap against Texas Tech, and they still beat them quite handily. They made their foul shots. They played solid defense, so even though their shots weren't falling offensively. I don't think Brunson made a three-pointer in the game, but he went down low and got some of his points, and he got some assists, and that's why he's the AP Player of the Year, because he's got so many facets to his game that he makes everybody else around him better. Even against West Virginia, DiVincenzo, not a good game at all. He was turning the ball over left and right, got himself into foul trouble. Other guys stepped up. I mean, this is a deep team in terms of the first 7 or 8 guys that play. They can all contribute something. And I just don't see Kansas being able to stop everybody. It's too much between Brunson and Booth and DiVincenzo. There's just too much there. Spellman's a great addition to the team this year. I don't see how Kansas will be able to contain them all. Villanova's going to get their shots. They're going to make some buckets. And you know what? If they're having a bad shooting game and they're not scoring a lot, they'll speed it up and they'll just take more shots to get the amount of points they need. And if they're playing well and they're up 8-10 points, they'll slow it down and become a very efficient team. They can do it either way.
Yeah, and I think therein lies Bill Self's problem, Rob. That's what I was trying to get at before, saying that what Kansas does best, Villanova does a shade better. If you're Bill Self, and even though you have 5-6 days to develop a game plan to get your team in there, walk through, and this is how we're going to diagram our shot to beat Villanova, I don't know that there is one. If you want to turn it into a track meet, I feel like Villanova will be slightly better in a track meet. If you want to slow down and play methodical, I believe that Villanova will win a slow-down, methodical battle slightly. If you want to throw defenses, change defenses on Villanova, they react to anything you can throw at them. I don't know how you beat Villanova, and that's not to say that Kansas has not been fantastic in this tournament, because some people will tell you that this is the second-best team remaining inside this tournament. It just seems to me that no matter what Bill Self comes up with, unless it's just another miserable shooting performance by Villanova. Let's go over those numbers for 1 minute here, Rob, against Texas Tech. By the way, this will be the third Big 12 team in a row that Villanova has played inside this tournament, and these are the 3 best teams that the Big 12 has to offer this season. But against Texas Tech, Villanova from the floor, 19 of 57, 33%. From three-point land, 4 of 24, 16, almost 17%. That on the heels of Game 1 against Radford, hitting 14 threes. Game 2 against Alabama, hitting 17 threes. Game 3 against West Virginia, hitting 13 threes, and then it sinks to 4 of 24. They couldn't have had a worse shooting day than they had against Texas Tech, and they won that game by 12 points, 29 of 35 from the free throw line. Helps.
And it was never really in doubt that they were going to win that game.
Yeah, there's just I think the point that we're both getting at here for listeners is that they're the most diverse team in the tournament. It doesn't matter which way the game is played. They'll find a way to win it. It looks, when you see them on the floor, on paper, they're starting out, it looks like you can crush them. Not crush them, but it looks like they can be defeated on the boards. Inside this tournament, Rob, they're plus 20 rebounding. So, again, they don't turn it over. They pass it real well. Their offensive efficiency rating is off the charts when you go to Ken Palm's numbers. Kansas had a real good run, and I would probably be in the group that thinks they're the second-best team remaining, but I just don't know that they're good enough to beat Villanova.
And, I mean, like you said, I think it's a very fair number, 5. I mean, you got a power rated 4. I think 5, especially you get into a close game, late Villanova is going to make their foul shots. I think there's a good chance you're going to cover the 5. I mean, the one danger you have is that it's a one-possession game very late, and there's not enough time for Villanova to make enough foul shots to get it over 5. That you could run into that. I feel very, very confident in a Villanova money line play on Saturday. Having followed the team for years and years, I think this team is better than the 2016 national championship team. I think they've got a few more weapons. I don't think they're relying on 1 or 2 guys. I think they've got 4 or 5 different places they can go to get points, 4 or 5 places they can go to get a defensive stop. I mean, the matchups are going to be very, very tough for Kansas, and Villanova's just relentless. I mean, it's very hard to come up with a game plan to beat them, short of them just having an awful shooting night. And even if they have an awful shooting night, you look at some of their losses this year. When they lost at Providence, I think they were 3 of 20 from three-point range, and they still only lost by 5 points. I mean, they're going to find ways to win basketball games. It's just what this team does.
And I think let's move over to, from a totals perspective here real quick, Rob. The total on this game opened 154. It's been pushed upward a hair to 154.5, 155. For KU, inside this tournament, they've already played 2 games over that number. Granted, the Duke game required overtime to get them over.
I was on the under in that game and was very disappointed to see the overtime come along.
There's no doubt. And they've played fairly high-scoring games because they've had more possessions. Villanova more on offensive efficiency is how their offense is based. But to their credit, 3 of the 4 games they've played have stayed under the number. So this is a difficult number as well. At 154.5, you really need quite the shootout. You're talking about having a 78-77 final score. Certainly not out of the realm of possibility. I think that's the way Kansas wants to play it, and I don't know why Villanova wouldn't go along. Again, you have to deal with that Alamo Dome, and will everybody be able to shoot clean from the get-go? We'll find out. I think these numbers really are placed in good spots. Of course, they should be. Numbers should be razor sharp by this time of year. We've only got 3 games left, so it's hard to find any real advantages from paper. You have to just have a certain opinion or strong feel for the game to be in a boat where you think it's definitely going to do one or the other.
Probably not willing to play the total myself. Put a gun to my head, I'd probably go the under. And I think it's just when you get to this time of year, and Kansas and Villanova are both teams that can shoot the ball well, I think that both of these teams are going to value their possessions. They may make an extra pass or 2 to get that better look, and it may not be quite as many shots and possessions and opportunities to get to the number. I mean, Can Villanova get to 80? They can get to 80 in a snap of their finger if they want to. I think that, to your point, if Kansas wants to run, they'll run. If Kansas says, yeah, we're going to slow it down and try and grind it out and limit their opportunities to score, and we're going to try and be efficient offensively, I don't think Villanova has a problem playing that way either. Gun to my head, probably going to be under, but going to stay away from this total.
Yeah, they'll have to. The one good thing about Villanova, Rob, is that they really do chase guys out at the three-point line, and that's where they'll have their hands full tomorrow. They've got to be up top of that three-point line because Kansas brings a variety of shooters that can hit it from distance. I'm certain that Jay Wright has drilled that into his kids' heads all week long because if you trade threes for twos, that's where you could get beat. Again, I don't think either one of us is trying to belittle Kansas. I just think that Villanova's the slightly better team at this point in time, as power ratings indicate, by 4 points.
No,
so we'll see how it goes.
Absolutely. And I mean, the fact that I'm very hesitant to take Villanova minus the points, I think, shows how much respect I do have for Kansas and how I think it could be a very close game at the end. And I don't expect Villanova to just run away with this. If one of the two teams is going to blow the other one out, I'd expect it to be a Villanova blowout, but I'm not expecting that. I think it will be a close game, and I think Villanova's just a slightly better team. They'll find a way to come out on top in the end.
Yeah, I think that's become the consensus opinion across the country for the most part. Bill Self's team has really done a great job to get to this point. But I just think, from what I've seen, Rob, and I know you and I talk quite often, and whether it be through instant message or via the phone, but I think we've known all season long, and the numbers don't lie. The offensive efficiency of this Villanova team is just off the charts, and we talk so much about offense. You mentioned it earlier. We forget about their defense a little bit. Not quite the defensive team that they've been in the past, but still really, really good when called upon. So we'll look for Villanova. If you're going money line, then I guess I would suggest Villanova. If you guys out there or ladies out there are going to tease, dragging Villanova down to -1 might not be a bad idea if you have an opinion on the other game as well. So there's ways to approach this. But as I said earlier, odds makers have numbers in a good spot.
And the reason I say a money line parlay as opposed to a teaser, you can avoid some of the juice and get the same result where the money lines are right now. You're just going to get a couple dollars under even money. 100 will get you about 97 at the moment, which is better than laying in some cases 120, depending on your shop, 130 on a two-team teaser. I'd look at the money line parlay as the better financial play in this game if you really think Michigan and Villanova are the two teams that are going to come out of it.
And then we would head to Monday, Rob, and we'll see what Monday brings. I can tell you right now that we could
almost just play that game. Let's talk about what some of the lines would be for Michigan, Nova, Michigan, Kansas. There's only a few possibilities of matchups here, so what would you expect to see come Monday night for any of these matchups?
Well, let's start with Villanova, and let's just pretend that the national championship game was tomorrow. We're using neutral ratings heading into tomorrow's games. If Villanova were to play Michigan tomorrow for the national title, we'd have Villanova -6.5. If Villanova was to play Loyola of Chicago tomorrow for the national championship, they would be -12.5. So that's a big, big number, but probably warranted. If Kansas were to win the game, Kansas on a neutral floor would be a 2.5-point favorite over Michigan. If it was tomorrow, they would be an 8.5-point favorite over Loyola of Chicago. So you can see how big of a dog. Loyola's kind of the one where the old, Sesame Street, I think it was, one of these things doesn't belong, and Loyola's kind of wearing that tag. Not that they haven't earned their spot in the Final Four, because they've certainly done so. But against these other three, you can see power ratings still show, and they've climbed throughout the tournament, and they had a great Missouri Valley season. but they're still a few steps behind these other three teams.
Well, and I told one of my buddies who we talk about projected lines quite frequently, I told him if the scenario plays out well where Loyola wins at the buzzer by a point or two against Michigan and Nova wins by 12 against Kansas, it wouldn't shock me to see an opener closer to -15.
Yeah, there's, at that point, a lot of the big money might seek value in the double-digit underdog, but we're just saying here on the podcast where this number is going to come. I mean, I would be very, very confident that without knowing tomorrow's results, right now I would say Villanova is about 12.5. And as you say, depending upon the results, it could be even more come Monday night if that's the matchup. So that's what we're looking at. We'll be back to break that down as well. Whoever does make it to the big showdown on Monday night. Right now, we'll worry about these two that we're faced up with tomorrow and look to get ourselves a little bit of profit out of these Final Four matchups.
Absolutely. And stick with RobVenoSports.com for any late-breaking news or information, any last-minute injuries. And, of course, check back with us Monday morning. We'll have a preview up of the national championship game. Whoever the two teams may be in that game, we will break it down for you. Don't forget RobVenoSports.com for all your plays from Rob, myself, Derek Davis, and a host of information. We've got NBA still going strong. We've got MLB action up. RobVenoSports.com is the place to be. Until next time, for Rob Veno, I'm Rob O'Connor. Thanks for listening and enjoy the Final Four.